Welcome to the Chapter 3 Stigma podcast. This podcast was created to be there for any individual who feels that they are at a low point in life and are confused, seemingly alone, and helpless in their situation. I am a recovering alcoholic, and I felt this way too, until I sat across a table from another addict who shared his story and made me realize that I was not alone in my struggles. My life was saved by this realization, and I hope to help anyone struggling by sharing my story to show you that you are not alone and that life can contain unbelievable riches and meaning. Welcome. I am glad you are here. Hey folks, welcome to another episode of the Chapter 3 Stigma podcast. In today's episode, it will be the first time we get into the actual work of Dr. Viktor Frankl and his seminal piece, Man's Search for Meaning. What I have done for these coming podcasts, I've sectioned them out into particular themes that really stood out to me as I read through the book, both portions of the book, which I'll explain here in a little bit. But once again, just to recap, why I see this work as so important and why I have been really longing and desiring to get to a point where I can talk about it on the podcast is I had the experience of reading this piece of work both before entering into recovery and after. And it was a transformational experience for me just in terms of reading the same words, but extracting a totally different message or seeing it through an entirely different lens as things had changed and shifted for me and my personal mindset after entering into recovery. And so I wanted to dig into these sections and the themes that really stood out and spoke to me most powerfully, both in the agonizing first read that I had of this piece of work, where I would take in some of the information and experiences from Dr. Frankl and just reflect and look at my own life and wonder why I was struggling so much to find meaning, to find purpose, when I could objectively look at my life and know that I had it so well. And, you know, I have great relationships across the board. I said I love people, and, you know, I really tried to put my actions forward to show and express that love, and just still struggling and fighting what felt like every single day, if not every single moment. And so the last podcast was just kind of an intro into the work. And today I'm going to get into the first two themes and sections that I have really called out here. Just from like a high level overview, this work is split into two pieces. The first piece where we'll start is titled Experiences in a Concentration Camp. So really sets itself up quite obviously what it's going to entail. And Viktor Frankl had really studied and put his life behind the pursuit of understanding meaning and purpose. And that was before his time where he got sent away to the concentration camps of World War II. The second piece of the book, which we'll also get to at some point, is a little more of a technical dive, and you can see his process of sort of taking all of those experiences that he lived and forming it and framing it under the mindset of his new philosophy called logotherapy, which again we'll cover in that section. But really the reason that this book has been so monumentally successful and impactful for people is it leads with experience, and then it closes out kind of summarizing why, you know, what learnings he had from those experiences, what he saw, what he witnessed, and just sort of pulling on that thread to get into deep deeper technical understanding. And while I mentioned it's technical, it's still extremely approachable if you're interested in just buying this book and getting into it yourself. I'll be honest, I think I'm not someone who like notates actually a lot of books, and this book has flags and earmarks all over the place. So I'm actually going to jump over the introduction of the first section, Experiences in a Concentration Camp. Really what this intro details into this piece of work is the process that Dr. Frankl himself experienced and saw others go through as they were settling in and coming to terms with the reality that they face of being brought together, being herded up and sent off to these concentration camps. Really just coming to terms with reality. So he details this period of, he breaks it into a few phases, but like really this first phase being of shock and individuals having, these last shreds of hope of, maybe things aren't as bad as they say, or maybe the war will be over before we even get there, or before it really impacts us. And he takes these themes and then, inserts like very specific stories from his experience and time getting sent to the concentration camps. And then he talks about a transition to another phase that actually, oddly enough, has a lot of curiosity and perverse humor injected into it. And really he details kind of like how short and long each of these phases can flex for people. And ultimately all of these first two phases were really capped off by just surprise and the sudden loss of hope and utter hopelessness that then led to apathy, which he describes and talks about from the standpoint of just like a pure emotional death, and just how that emotional death was really a self-defense mechanism more than anything to guard themselves against the true horrors of what they were seeing. There were contemplations of suicide constantly during this period, which it was pretty much the lasting period once everything settled out. And really this last part was sort of summarized by and a connection with and a bit of an understanding, yet inability to kind of step away from this, but everything becoming blunted. So things that would have disgusted you before is just sort of things that you are seeing and exposed to in everyday life. And it really is just horrendous reading the account and the experiences. And in all honesty, it's unimaginable. And if I'm being truthful, one of the reasons that I went to this book is I knew the story. I knew the premise of it, and I was really grasping for anything that would show me the extent that human beings can go to and still survive and continue to live. Because again, I've said it before, but I felt like I was on the cliff edge, and I did not know how much more I had in me or how much longer I could hold on. And so with that kind of high level overview of the intro and really the first like 35 pages, we'll get into the actual book in this portion, talking about love. So to the book, quote, "In spite of all the enforced physical and mental primitiveness of the life in a concentration camp, it was possible for spiritual life to deepen. Sensitive people who were used to a rich intellectual life may have suffered much pain, but the damage to their inner selves was less. They were able to retreat from their terrible surroundings to a life of inner riches and spiritual freedom. Only in this way can one explain the apparent paradox that some prisoners of a less hardy makeup often seem to survive camp life better than did those of a robust nature." And so then he breaks, coming out of the book, he's going to break into a story here of a march that he was on, and the person who he was marching with, all of a sudden jumping ahead here, said, quote, If our wives could see us now, I do hope they are better off in their camps and don't know what is happening to us. As we stumbled on for miles, slipping on icy spots, supporting each other time and again, dragging one another up and onward, nothing was said. But we both knew. Each of us was thinking of his wife. Occasionally, I looked at the sky where the stars were fading and the pink light of the morning was beginning to spread behind a dark bank of clouds. But my mind clung to my wife's image, imagining it with an uncanny acuteness. I heard her answering me, saw her smile, her frank and encouraging look. Real or not, her look was then more luminous than the sun, which was beginning to rise. A thought transfixed me. For the first time in my life, I saw the truth, as it is set into song by so many poets, proclaimed as the final wisdom by so many thinkers, the truth, that love is the ultimate and the highest goal to which man can aspire. Then I grasped the meaning of the greatest secret that human poetry and human thought and belief have to impart. The salvation of man is through love and in love. I understood how a man who has nothing left in this world still may know bliss, be it only for a brief moment, in the contemplation of his beloved. In a position of utter desolation, when man cannot express himself in positive action, when his only achievement may consist in enduring his sufferings in the right way, an honorable way, in such a position, man can, through loving contemplation of the image he carries of his beloved, achieve fulfillment. And so I'm gonna pause there, come out of the book. So that was a very obviously big and powerful, a big topic and powerful story. And again, looking at it through the lens of reading this on the first pass and before I entered into recovery, and just quite honestly looking for the key, looking for the answer within these pages, I read this section and found myself agonized. I had a wife, I had a son, I had a very loving family, and I recalled just being eaten inside with regards to why isn't that enough? Why can't I find meaning and purpose in that, in my battle with alcoholism? And a missing piece of that line of questioning that I didn't realize in the moment when I was really asking it was, why wasn't that enough for me to control my drinking? And that missing piece is really key and really everything, because I'm convinced that I'm afflicted by something where I truly have no control over my drinking. If I start to drink, I can't stop. Over weeks, over months, I have no control. And so the lens through which I was looking for meaning and purpose and questioning why was missing something. And it was missing something key, because I really don't think that there is anything that can allow me to control my drinking. And so in now reflecting back and understanding that, and honestly, in doing this portion of the project, getting back into the work, this is something I didn't even realize until I started reflecting back on it. It was like there was a key missing piece of my questioning and my agonizing over this. I wanted control. I had to get to a point where I had to accept that I had no control. Then that transformed everything for me, because now I do find meaning in purpose, in love, in caring for those that are close to me. And the other key aspect for all of this that I never had before entering into recovery is that I didn't love myself. I've covered that extensively here. And I know And I believe that I could genuinely love other people despite not loving myself, but I couldn't love them to my full potential, nor as much as I wanted to. And so all of that was held back and constrained by this obsession for this really unrealized obsession for control, because that was the question that I was asking. Why isn't this enough to motivate me or to allow me to control my drinking? So moving on a little further along in the book, he is going to start talking about, even in the midst of intense suffering, still finding incredible moments of observing beauty, specifically in nature. So back to the book. As the inner life of the prisoner tended to become more intense, he also experienced the beauty of art and nature as never before. Under the influence, he sometimes even forgot his own frightful circumstances. We were carried away by nature's beauty, which we had missed for so long. A man might draw the attention of a comrade working next to him to a nice view of the setting sun shining through the tall trees of the Bavarian woods, the same woods in which we had built an enormous hidden munitions plant. One evening, when we were already resting on the floor of our hut, dead tired, soup bowls in hand, a fellow prisoner rushed in and asked us to run out to the assembly grounds and see the wonderful sunset. Standing outside, we saw sinister clouds glowing in the west, and the whole sky alive with clouds of ever-changing shapes and colors, from steel blue to blood red. The desolate gray mud huts provided a sharp contrast, while the puddles on the muddy ground reflected the glowing sky. Then, after minutes of moving silence, one prisoner said to another, "How beautiful the world could be." So, coming out of the book, that I think is just an unbelievable experience, and just written with such attention. And you can really tell how these flashes and these moments really stood out, both in terms of, as he writes, the contrast to the grays and the coldness of the life as it existed for them, but also just in terms of those moments and how precious those moments were. And again, kind of reflecting back upon this through the two different lenses or frames that I read this book in. As I was struggling over the 12 years of really battling alcoholism, I sought solace in the mountains, in nature, as often as I could. It was many times the key driver for me getting out, for getting away, for unplugging, because I knew that I could have that reconnection, and I could find something when I was out in nature that would reconnect me with what I felt like was my authentic self, and just have that moment of awe and staring at something so magnificent and beautiful. And I really grew my fear of what was happening to me, and how much despair and how much I was falling away from my authentic self, when I had moments where I realized that getting out into the mountains was not offering me the same experience. I had a moment where I looked out at a landscape and I felt nothing inside. And it truly made me realize or feel dead. And I was terrified when I had that realization that I wasn't getting from nature, and I couldn't see it. I knew it was there. I knew it was right in front of my face, yet it wasn't being internalized. I couldn't recognize it. I recognize that it should be there, but I couldn't recognize and get that feeling. One of the incredible aspects of Lucy's life is, and this isn't necessarily a question that someone has asked us forthright, but it's kind of been alluded to, and just the idea of, what was the experience like having, the birth and the full life and the passing of a loved one, of our daughter, entirely encapsulated in, a modern hospital setting. Like, it's mechanical, it's cold, it's sterile, and that is one of the really beautiful things about her life, is how many of these types of moments that we had where, we were sitting surrounded by the beeps, the blips, the repetitive, sounds of her ventilator, yet we were able to see and view and experience these moments of incredible beauty. And I love how Dr. Frankl talks about even noticing the contrast, because that is one thing that really stood out to me. It's like the morning that Lucy got this bow tied up for her and put on her forehead. It was just like, it was this beautiful action and this beautiful moment, and just sitting there and looking at her, was really special. And you're in that type of moment, and and you can feel it just getting ingrained in you, and realizing that memory will be imprinted in you forever, but also just feeling a sense of lightheartedness and gratitude and love, just this outpouring of love in that sterile environment, and realizing that it doesn't matter. Those types of things, the vast majority of your surroundings do not matter. If you have the ability to really look, and to really find, and to really appreciate, and to really pour your heart out in gratitude and thanks for those moments, they can and they will stay with you forever, and drive you further, drive you towards progress, drive you towards loving more, towards giving more, towards caring more, both for yourself and for others. And so that's all I've got for this week. I love you all. Thanks. If you enjoyed this podcast, share it with others who might find it impactful, and give us a rating through your streaming platform of choice. Ratings and comments help spread the work to others who are desperately searching for a solution. This simple action could have profound impacts on the lives of others. My hope is that my story can help those who feel alone in their struggles with addiction or any other aspects of life. You can follow us on social media at Chapter 3 Stigma on Instagram and YouTube. If you want to reach out with a message through one of those channels, I will respond and let you know that you are not alone. All the best, you are loved, and know that this life is full of abundant joy and wonder, and is worth every struggle and bit of suffering you must endure. Until next time.